How about those Rogers Mounties? Rogers with a huge win at Fort Smith Southside to open 7A West Conference play. Can the Mounties do it again this week at Fayetteville in another conference showdown of undefeated teams? We discuss this and much, much more on this week's Prep Rally.
You're watching the Prep Rally Podcast.
Welcome to the Prep Rally Podcast, sponsored by West Termite Pest and Lawn. I'm Graham Thomas. He's Rick Fires. We're with the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Leland Barclay joins us in the River Valley, and we're moving into the second week of 7A West Conference play, guys. It was a fun week last week. Let's jump right into it, Leland. You were down at Jim Rowland Stadium for Fort Smith Southside and Rogers, two undefeated teams opening up conference play. And Leland, the floor is yours, sir.
You know, not a lot of times do games that are hyped up so much live up to the hype and the expectations. Rogers' 44-38 win over Southside on Friday night certainly lived up to all of them. Rogers never trailed in the game, and they led 10-0, 17-7 in the first half, and 17-10 at the half. They went up 24-10 early in the second quarter, took the first possession of the third quarter and scored, go up 24-10. Southside comes back and ties the game at 24-24. Rogers scores on two straight possessions to start off the fourth quarter to go up 38-24. Southside comes back and ties it at 38-38 with just a little over a minute to go. The place is just rocking on both sides. And then first play, the kickoff, Southside's kickoff went out of bounds, so Rogers took over at their own 35. And Dane Williams, Rogers' senior quarterback, hit Jeff Regan on a little screen pass to the left side, and he went down the sideline 65 yards for a touchdown. And then Rogers' defense held Southside on downs on four straight incomplete passes. And I guess you could say escaped with a 44-38 win in the conference opener for both teams.
Man, that's awesome. Like, just, you know, really sounds like a couple of gutsy rallies by Southside, and, you know, for Rogers to kind of absorb the blows and then still have enough in the tank to go score again says a lot about the Mounties. You know, just following it from afar, you know, you're just looking at that game like, wow, what a great ball game. Rick?
Let me say this. I like to walk the sidelines. I'm not good about keeping stats and tweeting all that, but I love to see the energy. Man, these kids are having so much fun playing these games as opposed to 20, 30 years ago when you basically played in a phone booth. You did a pitch, you did a slant in. And when I was talking to Chad Harbison about Dane, who is our player of the week, now, keep this, man. He threw to 7 different receivers, and 5 of them scored touchdowns. And that's getting everybody involved. And, I mean, the game right now is, I mean, of course, I'd like to see, you know, some defense, especially in the some teams scoring in the 70s. In the NFL, we saw that. But, man, these kids are having so much fun playing these games. It's fun for us. It's fun for the fans. So high school football, to me, right now, is kind of at its zenith.
Hey, how about that Jeff Regan kid, too? You know, in talking with Coach Harbison early in the year, you know, he kind of confided me, like, he's going to be a pretty good one. He's just a sophomore. Yeah. He's about 5'8", 150, 60 pounds. He's not real big. But, you know, when Dane Williams went out of the ball game at Farmington the other week, Jeff Regan went in and played quarterback, and he's a pretty good athlete.
Wow.
And at the time, Chad was like, well, I don't want to say a whole lot about him, but he's going to be really good. And you know, the kind of thought was he was trying to keep him a little bit of a secret, but everybody knows about him now.
Everybody knows about him now.
He had 10 catches for 244 yards, and of course the two touchdowns on Friday night. And I went back and looked, and the 244 receiving yards is second for single game in school history. And of course, Dane Williams was 26 of 44 for 480 yards passing, which is a school record, for 6 touchdowns. And the ironic thing about it is, you know, I thought going into the game, if Rogers had an advantage, it was because they could do both with Jacob Jenkins, who I think tied a school record last year in a game with a rushing performance. So I thought the advantage might go to Rogers because they could do both really well running the ball with Jenkins. And, of course, Isaac Chapman is also he's a different dynamic at running back, but he's a big part of their offense too, running the ball. And then as well with Dane Williams being able to throw it. Well, Jenkins and Chapman combined for 35 yards on 15 carries, and both of them left the game with injuries, and I think they'll be back this week. But so really the entire Rogers offense was kind of put on Dane Williams' shoulders. And so many times when a team gets ahead, they kind of relax a little bit. Well, they just kept calling on him and kept calling on him, and he had a huge second half. But 26 carries for 26 completions, 44 attempts. But, his biggest play, the biggest play he made of the game may have been with his feet. Rogers took the second half kickoff and drove to Southside's 24-yard line and had 3rd and 6. Rogers decided to go for it. He did a bootleg, gained 17 yards to the 7, and then threw a touchdown pass on the next play. So that 4th down conversion on the opening series of the second half that put Rogers up 24-10 was just a huge, huge play, and probably one that probably only a senior quarterback would be able to make. And, of course, that was in addition to 480 yards passing and 6 touchdowns. Just a great performance by Rogers' offense.
Well, let's hear a little bit about the Southside guys. I mean, they showed some guts in coming back, and they had some big numbers as well. What can you tell us about what the Mavericks did?
They kind of abandoned the run a little bit in the second half when they got behind. But they were able to do that because even though they're a run-oriented team, and that's what they've done mostly this year, Carter Zimmerman is a very capable passing quarterback as well. He's a super athlete. He starts on the baseball team, so he can throw the ball too. He ended up throwing for 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. Amari Tucker, 16 carries for 141 yards and a touchdown. Grayson York, 7 catches for 101 yards. He had that big catch late in the game that got Southside down to the 1-yard line, and then Zimmerman carried it in on the next play to tie it at 38-38. So, yeah, it was definitely a back and forth game. The teams combined for 997 yards of offense, 147 offensive plays in the game, 45 first downs. I could just go on and on about the game. But, we had talked about how even though we knew it was going to be an offensive game between two very good offenses, that the defenses would make some stops too. There was a point in the game where both defenses made 2 consecutive defensive stops. So there was a point there where there were 4 consecutive defensive stops, 2 by each defense at some point.
Well, it was funny when I was following the score at the game I was at, and I saw at one point it was 17-10 at halftime. I was like, whoa, it's kind of a defensive struggle a little bit. Then I get the final result. I'm like, well, that kind of the offenses kind of did take over, and when it was all said and done. We'll talk more about what both of those two teams are facing this week here in a little bit. We're going to move on to another game. Fayetteville, Bentonville West. Henry Apple was at that game, and I think all of us kind of thought Fayetteville might have the advantage there with their offense and Drake Lindsay and his receivers and those guys. Fayetteville rolls to a big win over Bentonville West. Jason Delamar with a huge night receiving wise, 5 touchdown catches. Rick,
Yeah.
what do you? You were kind of looking at that one in more depth earlier this week.
Yeah, he's a good athlete. He played some football last year, and he's a great baseball player. And every year it seems like, oh man, Fayetteville just lost this guy to the Razorbacks. Fayetteville lost that guy. Who's going to step up and take their place? And here he comes, Delamar, who's a junior, I think. And he could have been our I considered him for player of the week. But, man, you had to go with Dane Williams in the biggest game of the night. But, man, I really look forward to seeing Fayetteville as they go on. I know they got a big game against Rogers.
Yeah. Drake Lindsey had a big night as well,
Yes.
and Fayetteville rolled. Bentonville snapped their 2-game losing streak with a 73-39 win against Harbor. That one had some wild plays going on in it as well. Harbor did something I don't know that I've ever seen before. So Bentonville had 4th down and 1, I believe, on like their own 37-yard line. I don't have it right here in front of me. It was a 4th and short, and they were trying to kind of put the game away. They're up 35-14, and there was a botched play basically on 4th and 1, and Carter Nye ended up getting sacked for about a 6-yard loss. Harbor takes over and scores on the next play, and then gets an onside kick, and then scores again.
Wow.
In a matter of 8 seconds, they scored 13 points, and all of a sudden we got a ball game at 35-27. Bentonville comes out the second. Well, actually, Bentonville went and kicked a field goal to get a little momentum back and go up 11 at half, and then rolled the Wildcats in their third quarter, scoring 28 straight points, and it kind of got away from Harbor at that point. But my takeaways from that one were basically Harbor could score some points. I mean, they've got an offense. They've got some work to do on defense to be able to, you just don't give up 73 a lot of times.
It's been their issues last couple of years.
Bentonville they got rolling and it got better a little bit. And they'll host Southside this week in a game that we'll talk about here in a little bit. Springdale High gets a 28-20 win over Rogers Heritage. And, any 7A West Conference game is a big win. The Bulldogs did it on the road at David Gates Stadium in Rogers. Rick, I know you talked to the Springdale folks after that one, didn't you?
Yeah, and here's the important thing is, and people say, oh, they both have losing records. What's a big deal? No. When 2 teams are left out of the playoffs, that's a huge win for Springdale. So they get the leg up on Heritage. Now, Heritage got a big fight ahead of them to trying to get in the playoffs, but there was a good win for Springdale. The quarterback,
Pounders, right?
Pounders, yeah. 3 touchdowns. They're still running the ball. It was a pretty close game, 28-20. Just a really nice win for them. And now Springdale be back at home on Friday and got a chance to go 2-0 in conference.
Yep. Rick, you were at the game. We're going to move into the 5A West here. You were at Pea Ridge and at Prairie Grove, and to everybody, well, to my surprise, maybe, but certainly not to the Blackhawks' surprise, Pea Ridge, the big win at Prairie Grove.
That's stunning to me. Again, I think I've said it 3 or 4 times. I saw Pea Ridge in a preseason scrimmage against Elkins, and I know how good Elkins is, and Pea Ridge didn't look good at all. Hey, but Bray Cook and his staff went back to work, and they're undefeated, and they start off. And to go to Prairie Grove with Danny Absher, they've been one of the most solid programs the last 30 years in high school football. But Pea Ridge took it to them and just didn't let up on them. Seth Foster, 200 yards rushing. But quarterback did a good job, and they forced 4 turnovers by Prairie Grove. So going over there and win at Prairie Grove, if there's a surprise team right now to me, it's the Pea Ridge Blackhawks. They've already got 4 wins. They had 3 wins last year.
Yep. Another good game in the 5A West was Farmington rallying late to beat Harrison. There was a big interception there late. There were a couple big touchdown passes by Aiden Lester late. Again, the 5A West, it's just like the 7A West. It's a tough league.
Love that conference.
Yeah, it's a tough league.
One of my favorites.
And there'll be some more big games in that conference this week too. We're going to move it over to the 6A West. We're going to talk briefly about this one. Did you guys see what Little Rock Christian did to Pulaski Academy? You talk about years and years of payback. That was it.
Absolutely. I think it was the first mercy rule lost by PA since 2008.
Whew. Man.
I got my
and
trying to count.
I think that just shows how good Little Rock Christian is. Walker White, I think, threw 3 touchdown passes and ran for 2.
I guarantee you, I saw Auburn play on Saturday. They could use Walker White right now. They got quarterback issues.
Well, not only does it say how good Little Rock Christian is, I think it also gives an idea of how good Shiloh Christian is when they're healthy, because they went down and manhandled Little Rock Christian at Little Rock Christian.
Yep.
So, I mean, so what this means for the 6A West, I mean, our boy Tim Terry down in Greenwood, he's already looking at that Greenwood Little Rock Christian matchup, I think, in Week 10. He's excited. So, but I don't think PA's done yet. We'll see how they bounce back.
Yeah.
It's not every day, like you said, they get mercy ruled. So, Greenwood, they get a big win at Van Buren. Pretty typical. They scored a lot of points. Defense seems like they played well. So, we just move right along here in that 6A West Conference, but everything is kind of pointing to that Little Rock Christian Greenwood showdown. Leland?
Yeah, I need to find out what the seating capacity is at Greenwood, because that's going to be a Week 10 game. So the build-up, now Greenwood still has to go to Pulaski Academy. And like you said, I don't think the Bruins are ready to, just roll over and, play dead at this point. So that's going to be a big game. But once Greenwood gets past that one, which is Week 8, I think, it'll be the let the hype begin.
Yep. So that kind of moves us into this week's games. And so there's a few we're going to talk about. And we'll start once again in the 7A West. And like we said in the opening, can Rogers go on the road and win another big 7A West conference game in a battle of unbeaten teams? Now, I don't want to say it's a tougher matchup this week, more of a different matchup. Playing at Fayetteville is a different animal, I think, than playing what Southside does. And playing at Fayetteville is just a little bit different. So, and what you have here too is you have a long rivalry with Rogers and Fayetteville. Rogers beat Fayetteville last year for the first time since 2006. They beat Fayetteville twice in 2006, if my memory is correct, on their way to the state championship game. Had not beaten them at all since then, until last year when they won.
Now, I covered that game last year, and Fayetteville, this is going to be a key for Fayetteville. As much as we enjoy watching Drake Lindsay throw it all over the field, Fayetteville could have won that game last year had they had a competent running game. It was like late in the game, maybe 4 minutes to go in the game and everything, and Fayetteville had the ball. If they'd picked up 2 first downs, they could have milked the clock, but they couldn't do it. And then Rogers got the ball back and won it. So the running game for, hopefully Jenkins is back and Chapman is back. They got their full arsenal, and Fayetteville's really going to have to run the ball at some point against Rogers.
It probably will. In a battle of two teams who can really throw the ball well, it might just come down to running game and special teams. Leland, I don't know, what are your thoughts on the Mounties at the Purple Dogs?
Well, I tell you, the Friday night when Southside tied it, and I looked to see how much time was left because I had watched the Rogers kicker, and even though he did miss the final extra point, I was watching him warm up and then watching him kick extra points. And JT Miller has a leg. I thought, there's plenty of time for Rogers. So they have a very good kicker. And I know Fayetteville does too, but I don't know who's covering that game Friday night.
I will be there.
Well, like I said, Dane Williams threw 44 passes for 480 yards and 6 touchdowns on Friday. Drake Lindsay threw 39 passes and threw for 413 yards and 6 touchdowns on Friday night.
Your deadline's 9:30.
I was going to say you might want to check the deadline and just prepare them that you may not meet it Friday night.
I'll have to get on the horn with our desk and let them know I might be a little bit late. Another game we're going to be covering this week will be Southside at Bentonville, and Southside. It's going to be interesting to see how the Mavericks respond with a little bit of adversity. It's not something they've had to face yet this year, and they're playing a good Bentonville team.
Well, a very good Bentonville team. Still, I think the favorite to win the conference just because of everything. 73-39. Just an unbelievable offensive performance. But they also another kickoff return by C.J. Brown on Friday night, and then they got an interception return for a touchdown. So it'll be a big test for Southside. And coaches always say, because that was such an emotional game for the Mavericks on Friday night, they always say, don't let that be 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got to put that one behind them and play. First they've got Bentonville, and then after that they got Fayetteville. So this is just a brutal 3-game stretch. And like Coach Dameron said, that they're going to find out a lot about themselves during these 3 weeks.
That is true. The other 2 games in the 7A West Conference, Bentonville West will try to bounce back against Springdale, who just had a big win at Heritage. And then, Springdale Harbor at Rogers Heritage, those are 2, Harbor is still looking for its first win. Heritage is 1-3, neither have won, or they're both 0-1 in conference play. And, one of these, these 4 teams, these other 4 teams in these 2 games that we just mentioned here, West Harbor and Springdale Heritage, I think we kind of, unofficially kind of rank those as the teams that are in the bottom 4 right now of the way we see it playing out in the conference. So these are very important games, Rick.
Yeah. Last few years, I always thought there's a big gap between the top 4 and the bottom 4 in the 7A West. And for these teams right here, we're focusing on the Fayetteville games. For these kids right here and these coaches, they want these teams to get in the playoff. These early games right here are huge. So you can get a leg up on the competition. And what's it going to take, 2 or 3 wins in conference and get in the playoffs? So that is very important game. It won't make the headline, but we still need to check those scores out and those results because that'll go a long way to seeding at the end of the year.
Leland, you're going to be at Fort Smith Northside this week. They're going to welcome Little Rock Central, and we'll see if the Grizzly Bears can kind of get the ship right a little bit. Another good game down the River Valley this week should be Greenbrier at Greenwood. Greenbrier has been very surprising so far.
Yep.
Yeah, Randy Tribble does such a great job down there. This is their final year in Class 6A. They'll move back to probably the 5A West next year. But they play 2 quarterbacks and they put up big points too. So that we'll see if the Greenwood defense can stop another high-powered offense this week. And
another good game that I think has all the makings of a brawl is Farmington and Alma. I could just see 3 yards and a cloud of dust between those 2 teams. So, but that's a huge game in the 5A West. Both of them are 1-0 and looking to make some noise down there in that conference.
I always love looking at different conferences and see, the 4A or the 4A7 is one of those that's always worth keeping an eye on with Arkadelphia, Nashville, and Malvern. And the 3A1 is another one here in the River Valley that we love looking at. And it's got, Greenland and West Fork from up there, Berryville. West Fork. So, that's another conference that's great to look at. But to me this year, the 5A West is the one that is going to be just wild and big games every week. I went down and talked to Coach Rusty Bush at Alma yesterday and got some comments from him about that game coming up on Friday night. And he has already, it's just now the end of September, but he has already pulled out the words playoff implications already.
Wow.
Already.
Yeah.
So that tells you what a big game it is. And it's odd because there's 3 of those teams that can move to 2-0 in the conference this week. Farmington and Alma's, 2 teams that won last week. So only one of them is going to turn to 2-0. And in that conference in 5A, which is the purest playoff bracket of all the classifications, only 4 of 8 teams go.
Right.
And that's why he's able to already pull out the phrase playoff implication.
Here's another one in that conference I'm looking at. Hey, how about a bounce back? Prairie Grove on the road at Harrison. That's not an easy place to play, But I guarantee you Prairie Grove's getting after it this week. I know they didn't play well against Pea Ridge, but they'll have something ready for Harrison.
During my younger days, I used to gamble a little bit, just a Dr. Pepper or a root beer or something, and I always enjoyed a good team that gets manhandled, gets embarrassed. They will inevitably bounce back the next week. I could always count on that. A good team that really gets like PA. Well, watch PA. I don't even know who they're playing this week. But watch them bounce back, and I expect Prairie Grove too. They got to tweak some things and get back in sync on offense. But yeah, I really expect Prairie Grove to have a good game.
Well, I'm not saying they're going to go over to Harrison and win. I'm just saying, watch out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm with you.
How about the 4A1? 1-1 game. It looks like a lot of these games might end up being some blowout games just on paper. But I'm looking at this Gravette Lincoln game and thinking that's a pretty big game. Really, for Lincoln more than anything, Lincoln's wanting to really make some noise in that conference. This is the game they need to win.
Absolutely, but Gravette's no pushover.
No,
Gravette's go. They're really coming on. And as far as small schools, that's one of the better games in our area. I'm sure of it.
Lincoln's got that. Got a veteran quarterback, a senior, Drew Moore, who has put up monster numbers. I think he's getting close to 6,000 career passing yards. So having a senior quarterback, and that's what Pea Ridge has, is a veteran senior quarterback. And boy, the value of having one of those type guys is just is big.
Especially in high school, having a senior quarterback.
Leland, was there anything out of the 3A1 that you were looking at this week that was kind of catching your eye? It looks like
that's 4 of my 5 that we'll go over later.
Okay. All right. Well, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we will go over our top 5 of the week. And you are watching Prep Rally.
If you're enjoying this podcast, consider a newspaper subscription to the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette or the River Valley Democrat-Gazette. We have a special offer for our podcast listeners, so visit nwaonline.com/podcast23 to get started. You can also click the subscribe button on our websites, nwaonline.com and rivervalleydemocratgazette.com, or call us at 479-684-5509 and be sure to say that you're a podcast listener. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Prep Rally Podcast, sponsored by West Termite Pest and Lawn. Graham Thomas here with Rick Fires and Leland Barclay in the River Valley. And gentlemen, we're going to get into our top 5 of the week. Rick Fires, you're up first, sir.
All right, everybody knows the big game was that down at Southside. I'm going to leave that to Leland. He was there. He knows all about it. I'm going Fayetteville. Just keeps rolling along. They won 56-21 over at West Jason Delamar. Huge game. 9 reset, 205, 5 touchdowns. Drake Lindsay passed about 400, 6 touchdowns again. Their passing offense is just tremendous. Bentonville, which lost his first 2 games at home, they got back on track in a big way. 73-30 over Spring to Harvard. Carter Nye. What a balanced offense. 200 yards passing. Jason Gilmore, loved watching that little guy run. 132 yards, 3 touchdowns, only 7 carries. Let's jump down to the Central. It started conference play. Started about expected down there at Conway, 56-0 over Little Rock Southwest. They led 35-0 after 1 quarter, so they just breezed. Bryant, 48-7 over Northside, which kind of continues to struggle, and hopefully they can bounce back and get a win against Central. Back up here, Springdale Bulldogs. Talk about bounce back. They got a 28-20 win over Heritage. Huge win for them. They're 1-0 in conference. And this game, they're going to think about this game when it comes down the stretch and everybody's trying to get at the lower end of the state playoff. They were the great win for the Bulldogs. It doesn't look, it's not going to make a screaming headline, but they were the huge win for them. Quarterback Jack Pounder, they're running the football really well. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. Got to talk about tennis, 6A West Conference tennis tournament at Harbor. Went first round action Wednesday. The final round on Thursday. I have the pleasure of being there. Then the state tournament's at Heritage. The Fayetteville, October 9th, I think, a week or two after that. Fayetteville boys defending state champion. Bentonville girls defending state champion. But I covered the tennis meet the other day, and Rogers beat Bentonville 5-4 in a dual meet. So that's going to be interesting to watch right there.
All right, man. It just kind of speaks. There's a lot going on this week. We're going to get into some more of that. So 6A and below, how about this? How about sophomore Talon Williams at Gentry? 403 passing yards. Pioneers with 576 yards of offense and a big win, 4A1 conference win over Huntsville. That's number one for me. I'm going to add into that with the Gentry offense. How about Addie Taylor, man, when being a team player? Yes. He has moved from quarterback. He does a little running back, little receiver, a little bit of everything. The running back, Caden Coons, and wide receiver, Dylan Owens, they had big offensive nights. And, you got to credit that Gentry offensive line. They're big, and they're doing good things over there on offense for sure. I'm looking at number 2. I'm looking at the Lincoln Wolves with a big game against Gravett this week. They're 4-0. Got them jumped out to a big lead against a Green Forest team that won 2 straight games, and so that's a big win for Lincoln. The Farmington Cardinals, man, they just, the Cardiac Kids, they're not going to, they've had some adversity, and they're starting to fight through it with rallying for a 5A West win against Harrison. You got a lot of heroes in that game. Dawson Keaton caught the game-winning touchdown pass from Aiden Lester. Aiken Johnson had a big touchdown catch. Morgan Schrader had a big interception. Cardinals, figuring out late. Pea Ridge Blackhawks. We've spent half the show talking about Pea Ridge, but Bray Cook has done a great job with that team. You knew he was going to, Bray Cook's played big-time football before. He knows what it takes. And, how about Seth Foster, 200 yards, 4 touchdowns? That's just really impressive.
I love watching him run. He's a little guy, and he twists and turns. He's not like a speed guy that runs over everybody. But you look and say you think he's going to be a 6-yard run, and it's 26.
And then finally, I'm going to a little note about the state golf tournament starting today all over the state. But here in Northwest Arkansas, we've got the Class 6A girls over at Springdale Country Club, and as soon as we get done here, I'm heading out there. So, Leland, what you got?
Well, I'm going to keep, I'm going to kind of group 4 of these together because it's all in the 3A1. But Charleston, Boonville, Mansfield, and Lavaca all won their 3A1 conference openers on Friday night by a combined 184-31.
Wow.
Now, I know it's just the first week of the season, but it certainly looks like those 4 are certainly the cream of the crop right now. Charleston won 51-9 over Greenland, which was really, they started off 0-3 in non-conference play. So I think they were very glad to get back into conference play, and they scored 4 touchdowns and added a safety in the first quarter for a 30-0 lead. Boonville defeated Hackett 46-14 and racked up 422 yards on the ground. Plus, they got a defensive score for a touchdown. Mansfield defeated West Fork 38-8 on Friday night. Daniel Burton ran for 182 yards and 3 touchdowns, including a 67-yard touchdown run that capped a 27-0 first quarter lead. So another big first quarter for one of the 3A1 teams. And then Lavaca won 49-0 over Cedarville. So all 4 of those teams very impressive.
There's some showdowns coming there. I mean, there's some showdowns coming there in that conference.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to write off Greenland, Hackett, West Fork, or Cedarville yet. It's way too early because, you got to think that one of those teams, maybe Hackett, because they're very good offensively. They have a senior quarterback, Cole Ketchum, and one of the best receivers in the area, Bryson Hamilton, who's a junior. So, maybe they'll be the one that kind of maybe upsets the apple cart a little bit. Number 5 is Ozark, going back to that 4A1. And we've talked about Elkins and Ozark all year. But you're right. Gentry may be one of those teams that kind of creeps into that mix too, into that conversation. Ozark beat Berryville 50-14 Friday night. Ozark led 50-0 at the half. Ooh. Gavin Gilbreth has been taking on an extra kind of an added role on the offense, and he ran for 3 touchdowns on Friday night. But he's the ringleader of their defense and has been for 2 years. He had 5 tackles, a sack, a safety, and forced a fumble on Friday night.
Wow, that's a good day at the office.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, that wraps us up for this week with the Prep Rally podcast. You can listen to Prep Rally at nwaonline.com or watch it on YouTube, and you can get the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again to our sponsor, West Termite Pest and Lawn. And be sure and check out Prep Rally Live later this week, where Rick Fires and I will surely give the wrong picks to whatever games we're picking, because that seems to be what we're doing here lately.
Start. Yep.
And guys, it's fun. We're really playing for keeps now, and so these games are just getting more and more important as we go, as the weather gets cooler and the leaves start turning. So it's fall in Northwest Arkansas and the River Valley. For Rick Fires and Leland Barclay, I'm Graham Thomas. Thank you for watching Prep Rally.